you get your fair share of hateful comments. So how'd that go? You say, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to speak on some difficult topics. I'm going to try to go through some of these thought exercises and things like that. Maybe, I know for me, my wife took stuff the first few times. My favorite is the badge of honor. So I want to make sure I share it with you so you'll know. I am the brainwashed spewer of bile and filth.
Very nice.
I'm going to make a button. I've just now figured out the t-shirt thing. I've just now figured out how to get my fonts right. So
right.
I'm going to make a button.
That's a good start for merch.
It was the first one. It was one of the first ones. And I'm like, that's pretty good right there. So how'd that go, man? Because it is a humbling thing. It is a shocking thing. And I don't know if you've had this, they'll bring your family into it a little bit. Mine's not been by name, but it has happened a little bit.
Yep.
Talk to that a little bit. That's tough.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's honestly one of the things I took pride in the first videos I posted was that I was engaging and interacting with everyone in my comment section. I was responding to every comment. I was engaging with every comment because I really wanted to make my channel a like community that discuss ideas. I didn't want my channel to be a right-wing channel. I didn't want it to be a left-wing channel. I just wanted it to be people that are interested in discussing ideas, and we can all have our different thoughts about them, but ultimately we respect each other. And honestly, some of the hate comments that I've gotten have made me question how much I'm going to interact with the people that watch my videos, because in some ways it makes me not want to read comments, because for every 20 comments, maybe 2 or 3 are some of the worst comments you'll read, and you don't want to read those. It's the best ones to me are when I get called racist about when I talk about certain issues, and that's always news to me that I'm in racist towards Black people specifically. So that's always news to me to find out.
You're probably a white supremacist, right? You and Larry Elder are the face of white supremacy. You're just young.
I've read that
you just
too.
Didn't know it. Are you really?
I've read that as well. I did not know I was. It was news to me.
It's such a racist thing to say to another human being, is that you would conflate them to any other race. Like, oh, you know what? You're telling Ben Shapiro he's an anti-Semite or he's a
Jewish.
Nazi. I'm like, did you just say that? Like, what? Like, this stuff happens all the time.
Well, to me, the one thing that I take, the one thing that I appreciate when that happens is that it highlights to me that I'm not dealing with a person. Like, I'm dealing with some kind of NPC or someone that's possessed by ideas that cannot entertain the fact that there is a Black person that does not think what they think every other Black person thinks. Like, I pretty much look at it and say, if someone says something like that to me, they are possessed. Like, I'm not dealing with the real person. No real person in the real world would come up to me and say that, because it's absurd. But through YouTube or through comments or whatever, or if they somehow get a hold of my email and email me or something like that, it's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would that? Like, when they say it about other people, like a Candace Owens or someone like that, they can say like, she's being paid all this money. But what about somebody like me? I'm not being paid any money. I'm not making any money from anything. I'm just talking about ideas that I think and that I believe in. Like, it's crazy that it's so unimaginable.
I didn't mean to. I didn't talking about money in front of all these other people here.
Well, it's like,
didn't know we're doing that. So okay.
It's just crazy that it's so unimaginable to them that there's no way that I could possibly think what I think. It's I'm this or that or whatever. Or I've just watched all these. I made a joke the other day that I was like, and it might have been on a live stream that got taken down, but I said, I think a lot of people think that I sit in my house all day and watch like Ben Shapiro videos and Alex Jones and then go to sleep. And it's like, that's not what I do. I'm reading everything. I have a website that I get news from that shows me news articles from the left, from the right, from center. So it's like
not hard to figure out.
Yes, it's just because if I share my ideas about a lot of things that I talk about and they seem to be right leaning, like, that doesn't make me a Nazi or some crazy thing that they may say. It's like, honestly, right now, culturally, big parts of the culture is handled and controlled by the left. So I'm someone that's going to critique culture. If it was the other way around, I would be critiquing the other side just as heavily. I had plenty of critiques of Trump. But people don't hear those things. They just hear when you attack, their group that they associate with, and then they start saying back these responses that they have pre-programmed. And it doesn't, like calling me racist, it doesn't even cross their mind how crazy that is, because they're so used to these responses they already have set that they're going to give no matter what.
Again, I told you, we were talking before the show, I only have one nickname for one senator, and he's a Republican.
Right.
All right. So I have a culture war analogy for you, because in the middle of all the pandemic, my family relocated, and I've decided that I'm going to try to scale back all of my movie stuff and collectible stuff and all that. Well, I have all these comic books, and I was like, I got to figure out how to sell these, and the market changed and all that. So what I did not know is the culture war battle in the comic book world has been going on for years, as almost like a precursor of what keeps happening. Like it's almost like the social justice. First off, all of art is mostly far leftist. Like if you go to any college campus, the amount of Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal art majors is going to be like 98 to 2. Yep. And 2 are like, I don't know, my parents are Republican, so I guess it's insane. So it was no surprise. But what I didn't understand is over the last several years that they've become emboldened and radicalized and aggressive to people that don't. It's like groupthink. You're out, and you're out. And you started to see big name professionals kind of get kicked out of the club, and they no longer work for Marvel or DC. Well, this one guy had started doing this YouTube channel, and it's like him on a cell phone, all that, but he hit on the nail on the head. So I'm going to run my culture war. I've taken what he said, and I read books and whatever, but I had this philosophy, and I think it really, the one thing I think they say, and this is so there's different words and principles. So one of them is endorsement, right? They believe in endorsement. So I'm having you on my show. So that means I'm now endorsing everything you've ever said or done. Right? And you've appeared on my show. So if I'm a Nazi tomorrow, you're a Nazi, right? So there's a term of endorsement. So they can't handle who Joe Rogan has on his show, because therefore Rogan has to agree with those people. He's giving them a platform. He's giving them a voice, those things. So that's where that category comes from. They travel in packs. That's very commonly known. They talk to you like you're a child, even though you're an adult. I just saw someone being patronized, and the person's like 60 years old. And it's like, you're talking to them like they're a child. They're 60 years old. Like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. Anyway, but the one that's interesting is basically, like, psychology would talk about like projection. It's, the way you think, the way you get your news, the way you see things is how you think everybody does. So they deify a politician. They respect the voice of a Hollywood celebrity. So therefore, when someone says something positive about Trump or what Trump says, they take it the same way they would take someone on their side. When we say, oh, I like this Hollywood celebrity or whatever, therefore they take every single thing that person says the same way. So it's a weird projection of how they process and think that they don't really understand. And kind of like the NPC thing, they're incapable of saying you're different than that. You're not. They have no way of conceiving what you're talking about. So it's the reason you were talking about race, but every principle of what you're saying is kind of how they're going to look at things. Everything you do is bursting a bubble, and I'm sure you have stories you could share where that's been the case.
Yeah, it is for sure. I definitely think too, like even prior to having a YouTube channel, just conversations I had with people at work, or I'll just be very frank. I'm in the tech industry, and the tech industry is very left. But it's interesting because the industry itself puts forward, I guess, a mask of being left, but the principles in which the industry operates is not in accordance with a lot of those like left-leaning principles. And then many of the people I found within these organizations are also not left-leaning. There's something that happens that is I'll give an anecdote of a meeting I was in. I was in this meeting about diversity and equity and inclusivity at a company I was previously at. And there is this idea that silence is acceptance. So when you're in a meeting filled with a ton of people and they're talking about these principles they believe in for diversity, equity, and inclusivity, and no one is speaking out against it, you assume the people around you agree. And that was for me like kind of what I was thinking. I was like, does everybody agree with this? And then you start to realize as you have side conversations with people or chats outside of those meetings that a lot of people don't agree with it. A lot of people are very much opposed to it, but just don't speak out for like functional reasons, right? You don't want to have an argument with HR because that's mostly where the DEI requirements and conversations are coming from. Is from HR and those kind of departments. And they're now starting to have separate departments that only focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a whole separate thing that I didn't predict, but I was kind of afraid of when I was in school because many of my friends that were majoring in human resources had some pretty radical ideas about race and about all sort of things. So for me, I think the experience has been interesting to see what happens there. And then even when I just watch some of what's happening as far as ideas being spread overall, there is that idea of like giving someone a platform, like you mentioned, that I just fundamentally disagree with. Like, just because you have me on your show doesn't mean that we agree on everything. And better yet, if you disagree with me, then we should really talk and have that conversation be public so people can hear our disagreement and decide who they think's making the most sense. You know, what position do they think they agree with the most? And so, yeah, I think overall for me, that's I probably have tons of stories of me talking to people and them being challenged by something I said and them not having a response, but their typical response might have been that what I said was racist, for example, or something. But then when we're in face-to-face in person, that's just silly to say, so they won't say that, and they kind of get a bit
They
stuck.
don't know what to do.
Yes,
Yeah, they
and
don't know what to do.
it's like, how do I come to terms with this? How do I contend with the idea? It's even to me the same thing with celebrities. It's like some people will think that just because something has a lot of likes or consensus appears to be around it, that what they said is right, and that's just not how this works. Just because, you know, Taylor Swift tweets something and says something political and a lot of people like it, that doesn't make her a political commentator. That doesn't make her an expert on that particular topic just because she has a lot of likes on it. She could still be very wrong in her analysis of what's happening.